Hello and welcome. Let's learn how to bake a strawberry cake. Here's a list of ingredients you'll need to make this recipe. Please preheat your oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit or 180 degrees Celsius and let's get started. You'll need a 9 by 5 or 23 by 13 centimeter pan. Now I like to line these with parchment paper even though this is a nonstick pan because nonstick pans always fail. I don't care what they say, they tend to stick on me all the time no matter what brand I've used. If you don't have a nonstick surface, you want to butter and flour the pan generously or use a baking spray. But I always recommend using the parchment paper for added assurance no matter what method you use. In a small bowl, we're going to combine 1.5 cups of flour, 225 grams. To that, we're going to add in some baking powder and some salt. 1.5 teaspoons baking powder, 6 grams. 1/2 teaspoon of salt, 2.5 grams. If you wanted to use self-rising flour, you could just omit the baking powder and salt. You're going to mix this until it's well combined, just takes a few minutes, and set that aside. In a large bowl, we have 4 large eggs, that's 200 grams. You want to mix these together and then add in oil, 3/4 of a cup of oil or 180 milliliters. If you followed this channel a lot, you will recognize this recipe. It's basically the same recipe I've used for years. It's just modified slightly to use different flavors. Next, you want to add in a cup of sugar, that's 200 grams. Stir this until it's well combined. Then you want to add in some freeze-dried strawberries. You want 1 teaspoon worth. If you don't have the powder, you can use freeze-dried strawberries and then just crush them up. You're going to need 1 teaspoon, 2 grams. Make sure that you get all those freeze-dried strawberries in there. If they're sticking to your bowl, take the time to get them out of the bowl into your mixing bowl because you really want that flavor. Now, you may be tempted to add more freeze-dried strawberries, and I tried it in the past, and if you do that, it tends to make the cake gummy, so I personally wouldn't recommend doing it. If you want to add some more flavor to this, use some natural strawberry extract instead. Now we're going to add back in that flour mixture, and we're going to mix this until it's just nice and smooth and no more lumps appear. This takes about 30 seconds to a minute. Yes, you can use a hand mixer, and if you do use a hand mixer, just beat all this on medium speed for 1 to 2 minutes. Don't over mix it because then you'll get a tough cake. I find it's much easier to just mix this all by hand because by the time that you get the hand mixer out and wash it, it's a lot faster to do it this way. The batter should be very thin and pourable and look like this. Now, if you want to add some more flavor to it, you can add in 1 teaspoon of strawberry extract. That's 5 milliliters. This is not necessary, but I found that if you really love strawberries, it's worth the effort. Make sure you get the natural kind and not the artificial flavor because the artificial flavor is just not a good strawberry. And then if you want to color it, you can go ahead at this point. You can put in a couple drops of food coloring, and this is completely optional. I'm using red food coloring, and it bakes lighter than what it will show in the cake. Now, if you don't put the red food coloring in, it's going to bake into a yellow looking cake. So it may confuse some people, and some people like the red food coloring. I personally like to make it without any kind of dyes, but I'll leave that up to you. Mix it until it's just combined, and then you're going to pour it into your pan. Pour this into your pan and it will self-level. You want to scrape every little bit out that you can. You want to bake this for 50 to 60 minutes or until a toothpick inserted comes out clean. Now, ideally, the center should read between 200 degrees to 210 degrees Fahrenheit or 93 to 99 degrees Celsius. If you're going to bake a lot of cakes, it really does benefit you to get a thermometer because if you bake a cake any longer than 210 degrees Fahrenheit, you're going to have a very dry cake. The toothpick only tells you if it's done, it doesn't tell you if it's overbaked. These types of cake, a crack is actually desirable and it's normal for it. You want to leave it in the pan 5 to 10 minutes before you try to remove it. Now, if you put the parchment paper on the bottom of the nonstick pan or you greased and floured it well, it should come out really easily. But if not, you may need to use a plastic spatula to separate from the edges. But do not remove this too early or the cake will crack. Put it right side back up on the cooling rack and let it cool completely for about an hour or two. and then you can put a glaze on top. If you don't want to glaze this, you can eat it just as it is. A simple way to ice this cake is to use some powdered sugar, some flavoring, and then some milk. I use 1 cup of powdered sugar, 125 grams, and to that I like to add in some vanilla extract, a 1/4 teaspoon or 1.25 milliliters. Now you can add the strawberry extract, but I find it's a little too overwhelming for this cake. Next, you want to add 1 to 2 tablespoons of milk, 15 to 30 milliliters, and then just stir it in a little bit at a time, about a teaspoon at a time, until it gets to the thinness that you desire. Then you're just going to spread it out onto the cake. You could drizzle it if you like, or you can just spread it out on one thin layer, which is what I like to do. And as you get to the sides, kind of tease it over there and let it drip off the sides. It's actually really pretty. Now, one tip when making cakes, if your pan is a dark colored pan, I would drop that temperature 25 degrees Fahrenheit or 4 degrees Celsius, because if not, it will tend to over brown your cake. Once it's all spread out, it's going to be nice and sticky, so you want to let it air dry until you can touch it and it doesn't stick to your finger. Let's cut into this cake and see what it looks like. All it takes for me to get the dogs to come running is to just pick up this bread knife and start cutting into the cake. It doesn't matter what I'm cutting. They know the sound of this bread knife, and they absolutely are scavengers and coming to see if they can have some. Now, unfortunately, because there is dye in this cake, I don't like to share anything with artificial flavors or colors with them because I just don't think it's healthy for dogs, and it's honestly not that healthy for us either. But on an occasion, it's okay. I hope you enjoyed this recipe. Thank you for visiting us at jacksonsjob.com, and as always, happy baking.